Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of The Wise Leader. Today, we are going to do something completely different than we've done before. And today, I have the honor of being interviewed by a dear friend of mine, an award winning journalist, Rafer Weigel. And I'm just truly honored to have him here and to be the subject this time. So I hope you all enjoy it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, Dr. Donna. I am the one who's honored well, I'm honored because I just told you in such high regard, and I've watched a lot of these Facebook Live things, and you have you have so much insight that I thought it might be a nice opportunity to bring out some of your insight. And full disclosure, full transparency, Dr. Donna and I are not only friends, but I did work with you, and I have nothing but rave reviews. So I am a biased interviewer at this point. So some people might look at this as fake news, but I want to dive right in and start to get into, your brain, because there's a wealth of information in there. And one of the things that I felt was very unique about you was you're not only a life coach, but you're also a psychologist. Can you first of all talk about the difference of those two and why you feel it's important to marry the two disciplines?
Oh, absolutely. I see coaching as a psychological service. People tend to have a very narrow view of what psychology is and what psychologists do, but it is so broad, the field. It's one of the reasons I got into it, because I knew I would never get bored, that there's always something new to learn or a new way to use your skills. And I'm an entrepreneur. People who know entrepreneurs know that we need to constantly be doing things and growing, right? So we do get bored, and I knew this field would never do that for me. So earlier in my field, I did focus on psychotherapy, which I think just gives you an amazing understanding of people and how they work and their motivation and drive. And as a psychotherapist, I was always really solution focused, more of a cognitive behavioral mindset. Then along the way, I became a yoga teacher and brought a lot of mindfulness and meditation and different aspects of that into my work. And it just naturally segued into coaching. I started working with a lot of middle-aged adults. I went from kids to middle-aged adults and working with those midlife questions. I was working with a lot of entrepreneurs and very successful people in corporate. And it really was more coaching, where therapy is about diagnosing and treating disorders. Coaching to me is about thriving. It takes people who are generally doing well, but maximizes their potential and gets them from, a satisfactory life, which frankly on the outside often looks perfect to everybody else, but they're lacking fulfillment, or they've burnt out on their career, or they're kind of in this place where I've done everything right, why aren't I as happy as I think I should be? And just taking them to that next level of thriving. And with a psychology background, I really believe that all coaches should have some mental health training under their belts, some deeper understanding, because I do believe that coaches go into this with the best of intentions. I really believe that. But you don't know what you don't know. And you could really miss something important that means they should see a therapist, or means there is a deeper issue. And I'm able to see that whole picture, right? I'm able to understand how their brain works, how the neurotransmitters are reinforcing the behavior they're trying to get rid of, how self-esteem and self-concept work. And it's just really offers a much deeper and much broader perspective to get people to thriving.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that I found to be of value for me in working with you. I was one, and I'm not going to hijack this conversation and make it about me. I'm just trying to give some context to what you just said. I was somebody who was at the pinnacle of my career, and I was very unfulfilled emotionally because of personal reasons and being detached from other members of my family. And when I worked with a life coach, it was a little bit like, well, you know what, like a football coach, get in there, get in the game. I worked with a psychologist. It was a lot about finding where the source of that pain and lack of fulfillment was, but there wasn't as much action. So do you feel then that what sets you apart is that you are getting to maybe some of the root causes of things like imposter syndrome and sabotage and things in your book that we'll get to in a second, but also with the coaching mentality of, now this is what we need to do to move past it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like a marriage in a lot of ways. And some other clients of mine have said, there are therapists out there are coaches out there are yoga teachers out there, but when do you see all of that combined together? That really, I think, provides excellence to people. And so, you know, I don't want to get lost in the sauce, right? It's important to peel the onion, and it's important sometimes to get to that root cause, right? When you find yourself doing the same things over and over again, we've got to dig a little deeper and say, okay, why you know better. Why do you keep repeating this? But we don't always have to go that deep. And self-awareness is the first step. It's not the last step. And so if you're not taking that self-awareness and now putting it into action to do something different, you remain stuck. And as much as I'm a believer in psychotherapy, we've all known people who have been in therapy for years and they're not really changing. They have a deeper understanding of themselves and why they're doing what they're doing, but they're not really changing. And so I don't, I don't think that's what therapy is supposed to be about. I don't think that's what coaching is about. And the people that I work with are highly motivated to change. And they need some help, uncovering those blind spots so that they can change. But yeah, I think it's really a marriage of having that deeper level of understanding, but then it's like, what are you going to do with that? Don't just sit with that. What are you going to do with it?
Right. In your book, Unleash the Wise Leader Within, is that it? Did I paraphrase it or did I get it right? I want to make sure I get it exactly right.
Unleash the wise leader in you.
In you. I apologize.
Yeah.
You don't just talk about reflection, but also action and putting the steps into action. And when we worked together, you gave me actionable items. You may have already answered that, but I'm going to ask you to kind of go down that road and why the action element and putting these into action is so important, and give some examples on how people might do that.
Mm-hmm. Intellectually understanding a thing and putting it into action, or what I like to say, embodying it, are two completely different things. And how many books have we all read and we're like, that's great, and you say you're going to do it, and it goes back on the shelf and everything goes back to being the same. I didn't want that for this book. It's intentionally concise because my people are high achievers and they're busy and they don't need to get bogged down. And then it's intentionally solution focused and action oriented, because I did not want it to be a book that puts some information in your head and you put on the shelf. I really wanted it to change lives. I wanted people to get it out of their head and to actually live it and embody it. It's one of the reasons I created the whole system. I started with writing the book, and then I was like, and I put all those action steps in it, but I just wanted to keep taking it to the next level. As a psychologist, I know we need the repetition. I know we need to get the information in a variety of ways, visual, auditory, all of those things. And so that's when I decided, yeah, the book is great and it will take you to that next level. It has lots of action steps. But what if we really provided like a wraparound system and approach? And so that's when I decided to write the workbook. create the meditation album, which also has hypnosis tracks on it for releasing the blocks that are in that part 2 of the book. And then the affirmation card deck as a, a quick pick me up during the day when you're needing that prompt to get back on track and to really own your leadership.
When you talk about owning your leadership and unleashing ambition, among other things in your book, you also talk about how there are unique challenges specifically for women with regards to those action items, unique to women, different than men. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Sure. Our gender roles are really socially programmed, right? So at a very young age, women and men are given very different messages where men, and some of this is very subconscious. We've made a lot of changes, and I don't want to dismiss the changes we've made. I mean, we have a female vice president coming into office. That is amazing. But, historically speaking, the messages that women get are, to not rock the boat and to be polite, to be a good girl, where men are more programmed to be more assertive, right? And to lead more. And we see this in studies in schools and all kinds of environments where, boys are picked on first when they raise their hand over girls, things like that. And so women do face different obstacles, both in their own programming as well as in externally. I think this may have changed, but at one point in time, there were more CEOs with the name John than there were women.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a pretty amazing statistic.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of that, I mean, have you seen in your experience more changes for the positive? And have you personally witnessed, can you talk anecdotally about maybe some of the empowerment stories that you've experienced with women, maybe you've worked with or you're friends with, or maybe have put some of your action items to work and have seen the results?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of my clients who came to me took over a business from someone else, and she was very familiar with the business, but maybe, was questioning her confidence, her ability to, inherit all these employees and to keep them motivated. And she has become so much more confident. She is a great decision maker. Her team is thriving in ways that they never did before. And really, so much of it comes down to that collaborative relationship, which coaching really is. And I've just seen women grow so much, put their hat in the ring for positions that they were afraid to before. I think it was a study out of Hewlett Packard that that showed that women don't apply for positions, right? They're waiting till they meet, 100% of the criteria, but men are applying when they meet 60% of the criteria. So we take ourselves out of the ring, we don't step in. And so part of the work I've done is saying, I had a client who was director level, but really I was really doing VP work over here, and she was in transition, and helping her really decide that there's no reason my next role can't be a VP, or having people recognize, what, my next role is that COO or that, that C-suite position, because I have done all of this and I'm ready. But getting people to really, like in the book, claim their leadership and unleash their ambition. And women often have that struggle too of career and family life, and learning how to, reframe certain things, and to see themselves as teaching their children how to lead by going after their careers.
You talk about in your book imposter syndrome. Were you touching on that a little bit? Can you expound on that chapter?
Yeah. I mean, I have I have sat with CEOs of Fortune 50 companies who still experience imposter syndrome, where they're sitting in a room of people and they think, I shouldn't be here. Right? And these are really accomplished women, and men have this too, don't get me wrong. Where we, and I see it at all levels, right? I just said CEO of a Fortune 50 company, right? It actually doesn't matter how much you've accomplished or how many awards you have. High achievers often experience imposter syndrome, where they start to tell themselves a story like, oh, I was just in the right place at the right time. Or if people really found out who I am, they wouldn't have put me in this position, or, questioning their qualifications. And, part of what I do is really help build them up and realize how much they have accomplished. One of the things I'll do with a client is have them just take the time to write down all of their accomplishments and to see it in black and white, what they've done, and to keep that list, right? Post it in their office or something, or keep it in their wallet to remind themselves like they earned their way here.
One of the things that you and I both have talked about in working together and as friends is, the power of thought. It's certainly not a revolutionary concept, but yes, that your thoughts can ultimately will lead to your external circumstances. So that seems very fascinating to me, that somebody in that level of power, if you will, could also have those self-sabotaging thoughts. It seems like it would be antithetical to that level of success. So, I guess this is a layperson asking, but how can somebody be that successful and still have imposter syndrome?
Right. Well, I think when you get to that level, you're obviously not living there all the time, right? Because you would have blocked yourself so much, right? You wouldn't have applied for that next position and things like that. But I think it still comes up. There are certain triggers, right? And so there are certain situations. I had a client that for this person, the trigger was, being around people that this person perceived as wealthier, right? Like that was a trigger. So I think that to get to that level, you have to have learned how to manage it and minimize it, but it can still show its ugly head in response to those certain triggers or situations.
Let's talk about fear. You talk about that in your book as a block, and you more or less paraphrase JFK that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, more or less. So first of all, why can you talk about that a little bit more, and how do we overcome our fears?
Yeah. I think first we have to acknowledge that fear is not a bad thing. It's there for a reason, and it's ingrained in us for our survival. But our world is not the same as when that became ingrained, and evolution is a very slow process. And I think that when that fear comes up, we have to acknowledge it and kind of say to ourselves, thank you for trying to protect me, but I've got this. And we need to, our brains are wired for what's called the negativity bias, right? So our brains are hardwired to see the negative first. That's part of that survival instinct. But what we have to do is consciously choose to flip that. And where we can get in this like what if syndrome, we call it in my house, right? Like, what if this bad thing happens, and what if that bad thing happens, to turn it on its head and say like, well, what if I land this job, and what if I get promoted, and what if I could truly have work-life balance and still be successful but still enjoy time with my family, and start to get us into that place of dreaming and visualizing where that positive energy kind of outweighs the fear. But you have to make a conscious choice to get out of the fear.
And you're already delving into what makes you unique versus maybe other life coaches. So for instance, thinking positively, one might mistake that as simply pushing away your fears. And I know people like that. And it's just, you get fearful about something and you just say, you know what, I'm not even going to think about that. But it sounds like what you're saying is rather than just pushing it away, that line, if whatever you resist persists, you seem to take the approach of acknowledge it, but then massage it and overcome it. Am I
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
right about
I'd say
that?
that's a good description of it. I am against anything that denies our feelings, and I think that moves into a term we've been hearing, toxic positivity.
Mm,
Where we're going to be positive at all costs,
right.
and we're gonna, where
Can't
gosh,
stand those people.
gosh, golly,
And I'm
right,
a positive person, but why? Yeah, why is it when you're around them you just want to?
right, it's
I'm
that
not that violent.
cheerleader kind of
Yeah.
thing. And, all that does really, and this is where psychology really does come in, because it's suppression and repression, and it's going to come out somewhere else, right? Whether it's snapping at the cashier as you're checking out, or, the old expression of kicking the dog, which I hope nobody does, right?
Right. Please, nobody do
But
that.
yeah, but it will come out somewhere else, and it will end up stalling your progress. Whereas giving yourself a chance to process that emotion, to acknowledge that emotion, even to make friends with it, in
Mm,
that it doesn't have to be threatening. It doesn't have to take you down. And how can you even use it as fuel to
mm,
do something positive, to move into the next step? And I think, when you go to either extreme, if you completely deny and resist the emotion, as you said, what resists persists. Um, to do that, or to wallow and stay stuck,
right.
neither one is good. There has to be like a recognition of it, an honoring of it, and then a moving forward. But you have to do both.
It sounds really hard to do.
It can be, and that's where I think a coach is really helpful, because you need someone to hold that space for you and to validate those feelings. That's human nature, and we all need to be validated. And then you need someone to say, okay, now how do we pick ourselves up again? What's the next right thing to do, the next right action?
And that can be a very simple one at that, and it can take you to bigger and greater things. In chapter 9, in the book, you talk about how growth can be scary, but you say it's not about changing who you are, it's about stepping into the fullest expression of you. What do you mean by that?
Thank you for reading that. I I know I wrote it, but I quite like it.
It was very wise. It jumped out at me, and it was also in italics. So, a simpleton like myself could digest it. But it was really fascinating. I mean, it hit me kind of like a shot, because yes, when you do think of growth, and especially if you've exhibited self-destructive patterns in the past, then you can be under the impression that that is changing your whole person. And so when I read that, that stood out at me. It's like, so you're basically saying the fullest expression of us is one that's ideal?
Yes, I do believe that. I do believe that. I believe that we are here on this planet to fulfill our purpose, that we are born with certain gifts and talents, and passions and interests, because that's the roadmap to fulfilling our purpose, and that's where we're supposed to make our biggest contributions in the world, and be the most joyful. I think it's where we're supposed to spend our time. And when we're in our fullest expression, we're doing that. Oftentimes people get attached to um, to their negativity, to, in psychotherapy, to their diagnosis, their disorders. They start to label themselves that I am dot dot dot. And that phrase, I am, is very powerful. It's really sends a message to our brain. And when we start to identify with those things that are not really us, they're identities that that we're wearing like armor, or that we've surrounded ourselves with, and they're not really us, but now we're afraid to let them go, right? And so it really is like peeling the onion and letting go of that armor, which can be very scary, we often feel very vulnerable in the fullest expression of ourselves because we are kind of putting it all out there. And you have to get to a place of really loving yourself, that when people may not like the fullest expression of you, you're okay with that, because you know that that's just who you are, and accepting of that. And I just think the fullest expression of yourself, I think, is 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 light and love. I'm just going to say that, without getting too woo woo for people. I really do believe that that's the heart of it. And that's really what I want for people.
Well, that's hard to get to, and it leads me into my next question here about the title, "Unleashing the Wise Leader," and wisdom, wise. That's something. I mean, we've seen lots of books on leadership. Why is wisdom so important when it comes to leadership?
Mm-hmm. I think wisdom needs to be the guiding force. We see a lot of leaders out there, and there's all different types, right? And we do see people who are leading really with their own self-interest in mind, and what is best for them, what puts dollars in their pockets, things like that. And I think the wise leader thinks about their impact and thinks about how far it trickles out. When you throw that pebble in the water and you see those ripples, we think about, I think a wise leader thinks about their carbon footprint. They think about things like trafficking. They think about, what's my supply chain? They think about, are my workers earning a fair wage? Am I being someone of integrity, both for myself and for my people? And I think it's also listening to that inner voice, right? I think we all have an inner voice to guide us, that sense of intuition, and knowing how to trust that and allow it to guide you.
You talk about growth versus fixed mindset. Seems self-explanatory, but I would like to hear you talk about it more.
Yeah, this comes from the work of Carol Dweck, and it's really brilliant. The fixed mindset really is that, like, nothing's going to change. This is the way it is. It is what it is, right? Those kinds of expressions. And they really do keep us stuck. If you don't believe, everything starts with belief. You're not going to go after anything you don't believe you can have. Or, as I talk about in the book, that you don't believe you're worthy of or deserve it of. And you'll stay stuck. And we have a lot of these beliefs. Even if you think you don't, there are ones down there, things like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, right? That's a fixed belief. I can never get out of this situation. Like, this is my station in life, kind of idea. And that will limit the actions you take, right? Our beliefs lead to our actions. It'll create certain feelings, right? Beliefs lead to feelings. Whereas the growth mindset, even when you stumble or fall or fail, like, we shouldn't be afraid of that word failure. We recognize that that's a transient situation. It's not fixed. It's not permanent. What can I do with this? I loved when we moved into this school district, the year my kids went to school, they asked the parents to read Mindset by Carol Dweck, and that was like their theme for the year in school, was growth mindset. And they taught the kids something really simple, that when they say they encountered a math problem that they were really struggling with, they were not allowed, you hear, you can't say can't, but this went a step further and didn't take that word away, but they would say, I can't do it. And the teacher would say, yet. You have to add the word yet, right? And so, just as we talked about with feelings, you're not denying your experience, but you're also not making it fixed. In this moment, I'm struggling, I'm not getting the answer. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to learn this or get the answer.
So it sounds like the mindsets, when I think of a fixed mindset, I have certain people that come to mind who are just, that is the way they are. I think of growth mindset and people like yourself, and that's just the way you are. But it's interesting what you're talking about is that many of us probably waffle and waver maybe a little bit between the two mindsets. It sounds like this is maybe a fluid thing for some of us.
Mm-hmm. I think like imposter syndrome, there can be certain triggers, right, for a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. There may be certain areas of your life, based on, childhood programming and those belief systems that you think this is fixed, this is where I can grow. But you can challenge all of those thoughts and choose something different. That's where the awareness piece is so important. You have to become aware first. But just being aware of your negative or fixed thoughts doesn't change it. Then you have to say, what would be a better thought? What would be a more helpful thought? Or is there any reason I should keep thinking this,
So I have not participated in one of your Facebook Lives. We have been talking for 30 minutes. It's felt like 3. How much longer should we keep going? Because I could talk to you all day
Yeah,
about this stuff.
same. Why don't we call it at 45?
Okay.
Does that work
Sounds
for
good.
you?
Well, it works for me. Are you kidding? Of course, hopefully it works for the Facebook viewers.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to bring in some of my own personal experiences with you and let you kind of respond to how you helped me out. And one of the things that, I've always been very good at being a good soldier for others. I mean, I was on a morning show where I had to get up at 2:30 in the morning, and every time that alarm went off, it was painful, but I did it because people were counting on me. Now that I'm an entrepreneur, it's like the alarm goes off. You know what? I'm going to sleep a little bit more. I don't have my next appointment to so-and-so. But you got me thinking differently how, where it's easy for me to step in line and show up and step up to the plate when I got another team behind me. But you got me to start thinking about still doing that for myself with still being of service. Can you talk about a little bit how, what your thoughts were when I shared that with you?
Yeah, a lot of high achievers are like that. They're very dedicated to their teams and the other people counting on them. They're committed to their word to other people, but not necessarily to themselves. They'll put themselves and what they need to do for themselves on the back burner. And it's very common. It's especially very common with women. They'll prioritize their family and their career over their own self-care all the time. A word about self-care, I mean, it's essential. It's not something that's selfish, and we actually are more productive and more efficient when we take the time for the self-care. But as an entrepreneur, it could be the self-care that's falling off. It could be the business actions, right? Because we don't have a boss or someone to report to. One of the things that as we do is start scheduling those appointments and acting as if, right? Acting as if that appointment with yourself in that calendar is the appointment with the doctor or the hairdresser that you would not blow off because they would be counting on you. And starting to treat ourselves as we would others, right? We often don't treat ourselves as we would others. And actually, when we don't follow through on our own word to ourselves, like I'm going to get up and work out, or I'm going to get this project done today, we actually start to break trust with ourselves. And we don't believe in ourselves because we keep breaking our own trust. Just as we wouldn't do that to someone else because we want them to honor our word and know we want to that will follow through, we have to do that with ourselves. And when we don't, just like anybody else, we lose trust in ourselves.
And even the most mundane things. I mean, you had me putting in an appointment to meditate, to do the brain dump. One of the things that you had me do every morning was the brain dump. Can you talk about that and why is that important?
Yeah, I think it's really crucial, especially for entrepreneurs, but also the CEOs that I deal with and the high level corporate execs, because we're passionate about our work, we tend to get up and start working. Once you open that laptop or your email on your phone, you're gone.
Yep.
Gone, right?
Down the rabbit hole. Hmm.
And then we can really be stuck in disorganization as we're like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that. And it's all over the place, right? It's like what you need to do for yourself, what you need to do for your house and your family and your business. And it's all just cluttered in your brain. And we really need a place, especially in the morning before we start our day, to dump everything, because we get up already thinking, especially high achievers. And you need a place to just dump that all out of your brain and then organize it. What is most important. Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits, he talks about, what's important and urgent, non-important, non-urgent, and we can get caught up in those quadrants that don't really need to be done, or we get caught up doing all the little things because we can quickly mark those off our list and avoiding those big things that are often more important. And so it allows us to start our day kind of with a clean slate and start us more organized, so that we will be more productive in less time.
And yeah, I really had to really start thinking along the lines of, I am not doing this. I'm doing this for me, but I'm really doing it for everybody that's counting on me. And that is what would motivate me to do things like journal, like get out of bed at 6:30 versus 7:30, even though my first appointment wasn't until 10. You got me really thinking in terms of like, okay, I'm doing this for my family and for my business and for the people that are counting on me. One of the things that I personally had trouble with a year ago, and I noticed this was an issue where I learned it was from my father. You talk about some of the unique challenges that women face. Well, one of the unique challenges, I think, I shouldn't say unique, but one of the challenges that, as being in that, that male role of being a provider was your professional life first, and then everything else will follow from there. My job is to provide for the household, and that's it. And once everybody's got food on the table and we got a roof over our head and I've reached a certain level of success, then that's all I need to worry about. But what happened for my father and for myself was we neglected our personal achievement, and what resulted in it, my perception, was high ego but low self-esteem. Can you talk about the danger of the ego, and how important is it to balance those two?
Oh, yeah, it's crucial, because when you have that disparity, that high ego and low self-esteem, you'll never feel fulfilled. No matter how much you do, you'll never feel fulfilled because it's coming from the wrong places. You're trying to feel good about yourself by doing external things. And you're always going to be reliant on other people's feedback. The awards you win, the raises you get, the promotions you get, you're going to be feeding that ego. And because the self-esteem is low, it's never going to be enough. You're never going to fill that void that you're looking to fill through accomplishment and praise and celebrity or whatever else it is.
What are some of the indicators? Forgive me, my dog is barking. I apologize. So, what are some of the indicators? Because I also came from a very sort of stoic athlete type father, where we pushed our feelings away. If we were feeling sad or depressed, it was a sign of weakness, and you just simply push it away. So, what are some of the indicators that people might, who have that problem of high ego and low self-esteem, that maybe they should be on the lookout for? Or do you think it's a self-evident self-diagnosis?
Mm-hmm. I think that some of the things you should look for is that feeling of it's never enough, right? So you set this goal, you achieve it, you barely notice, right? You give yourself a high five for 3 seconds, and then you're like, what's next, right? What's next? It just never feels enough. And often that plays out in damage to the family, right? Because you're constantly chasing these things that are usually outside the family, these accolades and career movements. And so the family often gets put on the back burner while you're chasing these things. And oftentimes you'll see people, they can't take time off of work because they're afraid that, that someone will leapfrog them or something like that. And there is this kind of constant feeling of never enough. And if they aren't chasing something, they're not satisfied. So you'll see people who can't sit still, who can't sit through a movie, who, on the weekends, they would never sit and binge a show on Netflix. They'll be in the garden, they'll be here, they'll be there, but they can't stop doing. And in a way, it's that constant need for motion is a way of avoiding ourselves, avoiding the feelings, and avoiding that void that we really feel.
So the fact that I binged watched The Queen's Gambit over the weekend, I'm a balanced individual, is what you're telling
There
me.
you go. I love
Okay.
it. That's actually progress for you, I think.
Okay, it was a big deal. It was only 7 episodes, and I was able to do it. And
right.
Got up between
it's
episodes.
So funny because that is such a good point of the the old proverb. What's one man's medicine is another man's poison. Right. And it is about balance. And that is a beautiful progress for you, where for someone else, they need more action. But for these, for the high achievers I deal with, they need to learn how to slow down. They need to learn that it's okay to spend a day doing that and you didn't fall behind, right?
No, I did not fall behind. I didn't put it in my calendar per se. It just sort of happened naturally. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that you work with a lot of high performers that you say are unfulfilled. Do you think it is what we were just kind of expounding upon a little bit, the chasing, the high ego, low self-esteem? Do you think that's, I mean, obviously I'm asking you to generalize your entire client base. I apologize. It's not what I'm trying to do, but I mean, I guess, is that what you were more or less referring to?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that a lot of high achievers, get to a point in their life where they're like, what did I do this all for? Right? I've got a great title and I've got a great career and great benefits, but maybe I've suffered a divorce, or maybe I'm disconnected from my kids, or the thing that that really breaks my heart is people who are living for retirement to live. They'll take that trip to Italy then, or they'll, climb Mount Everest then. And then they get to retirement and they're tired. They might not be healthy enough. They may not have a family around them anymore. There's just so many pieces, and life is too short to wait for these things that would really fulfill you.
This is the ultimate softball question, but do you love what you do?
Absolutely every day. I mean, yeah, we all have some bad days, but I'm grateful to have my own business. I'm grateful. I really like when someone hires me, I feel absolutely honored that they have chosen me personally to be on this journey with them, because I take it very seriously that they're inviting me into their life. And to me, that is a big gift and a big honor, and it's sacred. And so I do everything I can to give them what they need, and to hold what they tell me in confidence, and to bring that level of respect to the experience.
And you do that. And I think one of the things I also, it needs to be pointed out in working with somebody like yourself, is that element of accountability. That I got somebody that I got to check in with and say, oh crap, I meditated, I wrote, I read, I did all these things. I better do these things. Otherwise, Dr. Donna is going to do, disappointed in me, which you don't do. I'm not insinuating you're, a school teacher like that. But that is and somebody that I spoke to, that made them nervous about the idea of having to be held accountable. What do you think that fear is about? And is that something somebody should be afraid of or celebrate?
Mm-hmm. Accountability is a beautiful thing. It's a very important part of coaching. It's funny because I was on a call yesterday and getting teased a little bit about the homework I give.
You do, but
Um,
I mean, you give us action items, and that's important. I
yeah,
apologize, I interrupted you.
yeah. And it's funny because they'll tease me about it, but they absolutely love it. And to be honest, when I see someone who's afraid of the accountability, it honestly tells me that they're not ready. They're really not ready to commit to the process. They're not ready to fully embrace change. And I'm going to geek out for a minute, but
Please.
Prochaska and Di Clemente are the researchers who kind of founded this model of change, and we all have go through these stages of change. And before you're ready to act, there are these stages like pre-contemplation where you start to think about what should I do? Maybe I should get a coach, but you're really not ready to commit yet. You are still a little too comfortable in the discomfort, in the pain, in whatever is going on. You're not feeling that urgency yet to change. But when you get to action, you welcome the accountability because you don't want to fall back off track. And you know that you need the help, right? You acknowledge, hey, I'm trying to do this on my own and I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not getting anywhere. And for high achievers, we love to overthink. We think we can solve everything. We don't like to ask for help because we're very independent. And I'm saying we because I throw myself in there as well. But what happens with high achievers is we ruminate and we spin our wheels and we go round and round, and you need someone outside of you to go stop and let's peel this apart, right? Because all you're doing is telling yourself the same thing over and over again.
Well, it is an ongoing process, one that I have found tremendous value in, and I think you are one of the more fascinating interviews I've ever been involved with. Dr. Donna, thank you so much. I hope I did okay in asking you poignant questions and and I wasn't too verbose.
Oh my gosh, this was a joy to do, and I have to give a shout out to you, Rafer. You are a brilliant interviewer, and you always make me look good. And if any of you businesses or entrepreneurs out there are looking for some marketing videos, Rafer did my videos, and he really is brilliant in helping you tell your story because I know, like me, you are probably very passionate about what you do, but marketing is probably not your specialty, and what you want to do is get to work with your people. So thank you, Rafer, for volunteering your time today and being on my show. And I feel very honored to have worked with you.
For me, it was like a free session, Dr. Donna. Are you kidding? Normally send me back about $250 and I got it for free. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and I wish everyone a great day. We'll go through the comments afterwards and respond to any comments, and you'll find links in the comments to Rafer's website and to my own, and feel free to ask us questions. So take care, everyone.